Tingnan ninyo, kaaway ni Marcos, pinatawag ni Marcos si Doy Laurel. Bakit pinatawag? Alamin natin po dito. His deathbed, when I visited him in Hawaii on February 3, 1989, Marcos personally asked me to convey to Cory Aquino his offer to give up 90% of his earthly possessions to the Filipino people through a foundation which he had set up. The reason why we need to, kailangang another Marcos, mga kababayan, makaupo. Because if not, yung wealth, sayang yun eh. Di ba? Yung wealth na laging sinasabi nila, ill-gotten, hindi man po yun ill-gotten, sabi natin. Actually, gusto yun itulong. Because it was put in trust, sabi ko nga sa inyo, mga kababayan. Hello po mga kababayan, kamusta po kayo? Short video ulit po. Ngayon po, gusto ko pong i-share sa inyo itong kwento na isinulat ni dating Vice President Doy Laurel. Siguro naman, most of you, lalo na yung panahon ni dating Presidente Cory Aquino, familiar kay Doy Laurel. Siya po yung Vice President. Siya sana yung dapat tumakbo for President against President Marcos during this snap election. Kaya lang, the manipulation of the, Dilawan, yun, nangyari po na instead of Doy Laurel, na kung titingnan po ninyo, the most qualified, inilagay nila because of appeal, mga kababayan, si Cory Aquino. Ngayon, in this story, dito natin makikilala kung ano si Cory sa mata ng kanyang kapartido. Nagkaiwalay po sila. And ano si dating Presidente Marcos. So, with that, para mabuksan siguro yung isipan ng mga tagaanga ng mga dilawan at yung mga haters ni Marcos. Galing na mismo sa bibig ng kapartido, mga kababayan ni Cory, ang kwento. So, sabi dito, From the Lips of a Dying President. Yun ang title ng kwento na sinulat po ni Doy Laurel. Salvador H. Laurel, Vice President of the Philippines, 1992. So, 1992, so ito, pinablish, mga kababayan. Sabi niya rito, I can attest to that. Weak and already on his deathbed, when I visited him in Hawaii, referring to the former president, pinatawag kasi siya eh. Tingnan ninyo, kaaway ni Marcos, pinatawag ni Marcos si Doy Laurel. Bakit pinatawag? Alamin natin po dito. His deathbed, when I visited him in Hawaii on February 3, 1989, Marcos personally asked me to convey to Cory Aquino his offer to give up 90% of his earthly possessions to the Filipino people through a foundation which he had set up. Ito yung dating, yung lagi pong kinikwento ko po sa inyo. The reason why we need to, kailangang another Marcos, mga kababayan, makaupo. Because if not, yung wealth, sayang yun eh. Di ba? Yung wealth na laging sinasabi nila, ill-gotten, hindi man po yun ill-gotten, sabi natin. Actually, gusto yun itulong. Because it was put in trust, sabi ko nga sa inyo, mga kababayan. So ito yung mismong confirmation. 90% of his earthly possessions to the Filipino people through a foundation which he had set up. But Cory only would allow him to die in his own country. and be buried beside his mother. Yun lang naman po yung request ng dating Pangulo. I related this incident in a book, Neither Trumpets Nor Drums, published in 1992, right after I ended my term as Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines. Pertinent portions that book I now quote for the benefit of those who have not read it. One of the most unforgettable trips I took as Vice President was my visit to Honolulu on February 3 and 4, 1989. Paglalahad po ni Doy Laurel. On February 2nd, at about 5 p.m., I received an urgent call from Mrs. Imelda Romualdez Marcos in Honolulu. She was sobbing on the phone. Iyak nang iyak daw si Mrs. Marcos. Doy, pwede ka bang makapunta rito? Masama na ang tayo ni Ferdinand. Gusto kang kausapin. Baka hindi na siya magtagal. Please come, she pleaded. I'll have to cancel my appointment, sabi po ni Doy Laurel. Maybe I can go in few days, I asked. She interrupted me. Baka hindi mo na siya abutin, sabi po daw ni Mrs. Marcos. Please come as soon as possible. I thought about it. The cases filed against the Marcoses had been pending for 3 years, yet nothing had happened. And the nation remained fragmented. Perhaps if I tried the Lincolnian approach with malice toward none, with charity for all, we might be able to settle the issue and unite the nation. Sabi po naisip po ni Doy Laurel. Then I remembered Imelda's plea. Gusto kang kausapin. Maybe there is a chance, maybe he is ready to settle. Yun ang nasa isip niya po. She first briefed me about President Marcos' condition, that he was very weak. The doctors who were attending to him told me he had a less than 50% chance of surviving. Seryoso na po daw yun. Kalagayan ni dating President Marcos sa Honolulu, Hawaii. That he might not even last 3 months. Then they took me to the intensive care unit. I could not recognize Ferdinand Marcos. Ibig sabihin, lumarga siya from the Philippines, lumipad siya papuntang Hawaii, and finally nakipagkita kay dating Presidente Ferdinand Marcos. Hindi na niya ma-recognize na maayos. The Marcos I knew was athletic, active, and articulate. The man I saw was skin and bones. Siyempre, may sakit eh. About 85 pounds. Imelda announced cheerfully, Andy, referring to Doy Laurel. Salvador kasi, ang kanya nickname, Andy, tawag sa kanya. Tawag sa kanya ni Imelda. Pero baka kasi na-confuse kayo. Ang tawag sa kanya, popularly known as Doy Laurel. Salvador kasi yung pangalan niya. Andy, narito na ang Batanggenyo. Mali. Referring to hindi Andy. Si Andy, si Ferdinand. Mali yung si Andy pala yung tawag ni Mrs. Marcos sa kanyang asawa. Andy, narito na ang Batanggenyo. Narito na si Doy. His eyes opened. He recognized me. He tried to talk, but only his lips moved. There was no sound. Sabi dito. He signaled the nurse to remove the tube embedded in his throat. The nurse pulled out the long tube and asked me to bend closer so I could hear. Finally, I heard his voice, sabi ni Doy Laurel. Very faint. Almost a whisper. Bulong na lang yun. Yun ang makapagsalita na maayos yung dating Pangulo, Ferdinand Marcos. Salamat, Brad. Nakarating ka, sabi ni Marcos. I have something to tell you. I interrupted him, sabi ni Doy. Before you start, Mr. President, may I ask just one question? Then, tumango si hinade. Why did you call me, Mr. President? Sabi ni Doy. Why me of all people? I vehemently oppose you. I was probably one of those responsible for your ouster. Why me? Tanong ni Doy Laurel. Kay dating, bakit po anya pinatawag pa ako? Ako yung isa siguro sa dahilan responsible para sa pagpatalsik sa iyo. Pero bakit ako? He signaled me to stop. Stop. Say no more, Brad, he said. I never held that against you. You did what you had to do as a leader of the opposition for many years. Walang personalan po kay Marcos pala yun. Wala. You opposed me on principle, never on personality. You were against martial law, but you were noble about it, unlike some people. Galing talaga ng dating Presidente Marcos. Ano po? Besides, I cannot forget your father. I owe him my life. Not once, but thrice. Let me talk now. I have very little time, sabi po ni President Marcos. Please tell Mrs. Aquino to stop sending me her relatives. They are proposing and asking so many things. All I want is to die in my country. I will run over 90% of all my worldly possessions to our conversations to our people. I asked only 10% for my family. Inanin niya. Ito yung deal mismo galing sa bibig ng dating Pangulo. Tingnan ninyo, ano nangyari? Alam na ninyo. In fact, until today, yun ang deal ni Mrs. Marcos. Kinausap ng ating Pangulo, patapos na po. Run in thy run. Run in thy run? Walang mangyayari dito. Sabi ko sa inyo, kung run in thy run tayo. Once lang na-mention ng ating Pangulong Digong, yung tungkol sa yaman ni dating Pangulong Marcos na pwedeng i-negotiate. After that, news, wala na po. You see? Noon pa to. Hindi talaga itong mga dilawan, sabi ko sa inyo. May ulterior motive talaga po sila. You see? Ang gusto sa naman po ng pamilya Marcos, 10%. Para mabuhay naman po sila, di ba? Nang maayos. 90% give up na niya. Give up na nila. Just let me die in my own country. I want to be buried beside my mother. His breathing had become more labored. The nurse stopped our conversation. He has to rest. He has to rest now, she said. Before leaving, I told him, Mr. President, I don't now know if Mrs. Aquino will listen to me, but I will try. Pati yung kapartido po, Vice President ng Pilipinas, kapartido ni Mrs. Aquino, nagdududa. May conflict na kasi sila eh. Kasi si Mrs. Aquino noon napapalibutan ng mga vested interests, yung kamag-anak incorporated. Remember? Yung because of that call kay Mrs. Aquino ng dating yung broadcaster po, si Louis Beltran. And because of the issue doon sa Yung nagtago sa ilalim. Kinaso, libel, si Louis Beltran. You see? Freedom of expression, freedom of the press. Wala po sa kanilang freedom of expression. So, I'll try niya, sabi ni Doy Laurel. Pero hindi ko na niya alam kung makikinig siya sa akin. I hurried back to Manila to transmit Marcos' message to President Aquino. I asked for an appointment but Cory would not see me. Para ding si Lumia, no? Yung unification effort. Sumurin din na lang niya. Copycat. Duplicate, mga kababayan. Here I was, her own vice president, sabi ni Doy, asking only for 3 minutes of her time to convey an important message from her predecessor, and she would not see me. I was told by her executive secretary, Catalino Macaraig, she was busy. I learned later that she had allocated an hour to Tom Cruise, an American movie star. Nagtaka pa kayo kung bakit si Panot, mga kababayan, imbes na pumunta doon sa salubungin yung SAF, 44 na namatay, nandun siya naglalaro. Like mother, like son. Naglalaro sa sa isa. Car company, inauguration. Yeah. Naglalaro. Yung nanay niya kasi si Tom Cruise. Boy, madali lang, boy. Kita. In view of a repeated refusal to see me and hear what I had to say, I wrote her a letter dated February 5, 1989. Since my arrival yesterday, I had been trying to get an appointment with you. I hope you will find time to listen to the highly confidential message of Mrs. Marcos or Mr. Marcos, considering its serious import and far-reaching consequences upon your administration in the nation as a whole. The next day, Cory replied, as to the highly confidential message from former President Ferdinand E. Marcos, I feel that in light of your representation of its serious import and far-reaching consequences upon your administration or my administration, in the nation as a whole, such message should be disclosed to the public rather than kept confidential. This is in accordance with my announced policy of utmost transparency in the management of the affairs of the country. On the same day, I wrote back, I am still hoping that you will change your mind and receive the message in a private, non-political, direct, and unfiltered manner beyond any personal and partisan consideration. Tapos, as to your public suggestion that I share with the public the highly confidential information, I am afraid I am not yet at liberty to do so, considering that the message was entrusted to me in confidence to be delivered to you personally. Only you and former President Marcos can declassify or disclose this message. Let us give national reconciliation and national stability every chance to succeed for the sake of our fragmented people. I never received any further reply from Cory, sabi po ni Doy. Cory's refusal to receive Marcos' message was perhaps her biggest mistake. Had she studied it carefully, she could have settled the Marcos wealth issue 8 years ago. Perhaps we could have paid off our foreign debt. Salvador H. Laurel, Vice President of the Philippines. Kaya kayo mga bugok na dilawan, hanap na hanap kayo kung saan yung yaman. Binibigay na para pakinabangan ng mga Pilipino. Anong ginawa ng patron ninyo? Na si Cory. You see? Huwag kami ninyong niluloko. Pinaikot niyo lahat. Why? Because may mga interest kasi kayo, especially yung mga advisors. Sabi ko sa inyo, they are actually the one controlling this. And we are denied of the, uh, the wealth na sana. Sabi mismo ni Doy Laurel, perhaps we could have paid off our foreign debt. 90%. 10% lang. Yung itira naman anyan yun sa amin. Yun ang sinasabi ni Mrs. Marcos. It is put in trust. It is not only for the benefit of the Filipino people, just like what Attorney Karen Hodes has been saying all the time. It is for humanity. Yun din ang sinabi ni Mrs. Marcos. Hindi lang sa mga Filipino, but ayaw paniwalaan. For humanity, ayaw paniwalaan ni Mel Chanco sa interview. Panoorin po ninyo. So with this episode, mga kababayan, share lang po ninyo ito para malaman ng buong Pilipinas kung sino yung mga salarin po dito. Kung paano nila pinaiikot through propaganda. They continue on, attacking the Marcoses, especially BBM as he is running for president. Ayaw nilang pakinabangan po ng mga Filipino. Sino gusto maging? Siyempre sila. Yun na may kontrol Because they are allied with the oligarchs and the elite cabal. That's it mga kababayan. Maraming salamat po.